Mareva, I sent you a couple of questions beforehand, and rather mischievously, I started off with a quotation from Mao Zedong, that women hold up half the sky. So are they, and then I said, but are they bearing a fair share of the environmental burden? If not, why not? Now, of course, I hope I'm not prying too much into family affairs, but are you holding up half of the Greek sky?
Ooh, that's difficult. I thought hopefully you're not going to ask me about the elections in the US because I have to be very careful in my position what I say, but that's even more difficult than the US. I don't...
No, I'm being mischievous.
No,
I shouldn't push you on this. I don't want to embroil you in politics.
Actually, I don't interfere much.
Yeah.
That's the truth. And I think it's not my position to interfere in the Prime Minister's work. Yeah. I do have, honestly, it's also difficult for me having a background in economics and financial institution. I worked for Deutsche Bank for 18 years. It's very hard to be the second violin. But once you decide to do that, you have to keep track and remain in the back, not talk too much. This is his job, and I don't hold the half of the burden. I might talk about, say my opinion, but in the background.
Well, I was thinking, I didn't want to sort of
lure
you too much into politics.
It's
but
fine.
If you take the SDG, Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is basically gender equality, and actually women in leadership is stagnating. So it's not too bad, but it's there. Nothing else seems to be going terribly well.
Yeah, well, I think that women in leadership, basically, the world has become more difficult in every sense, and especially for women. I think the quotas that you have in corporate governance have been helpful in one direction, but on the other hand, it is hard because you only pick up women because of the quota. I think sometimes you have to go by meritocracy in leadership. It's not because we are women that we need to be in certain positions. What I think mostly depends on your merit. If you're capable, I go very much for that, and I have worked very hard in my life to arrive, but not because I'm a woman, because I deserve to be in that position that I am.
But does that mean that women face a really almost impossible choice if they want to have a career and climb the whole ladder right to the top? They then have to give up ideas of children, family, whatever.
I think women, in one of the points that you asked me about policies, I think you need to have policies in place that will help women. And that has been, in many countries, has been missing. Governments haven't done enough to help women because women have a burden, which is also, I mean, I don't see it as a burden, but you do consider it is that they have two jobs. They have the mother, which is one hat, and they have the working, as a working personality, another hat. And it is very hard to combine both. And I think that that's also one of the problems. Women that need to make it are not having kids. If you see, we're in a period of life where you see that women are opting for not having children. Yeah. Because they cannot manage both the children and the workforce. It's very difficult. So I think that one of the issues that you that you encounter is that women tend to say, I either have to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
I see the difficulty. You need help. You need good schools. You need support you need incentives. There are a lot of things that are in need for women.
If you're in a rich country, if you're in Sweden or Norway or Denmark or France, you can have government policies which give childcare, which give maternity leave, paternity leave as well. I mean, the government policies can actually be very helpful. But if you're in a poor country, if you're in somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, that potential doesn't really exist for government action, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, Africa in every sense is a very different story. It's non-comparable. The issues that you have in Africa are issues, food, how they're going to feed their kids, how they're going to go workers. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting topic to see, how are the workers in Africa, for example. I haven't looked at this because we didn't discuss it beforehand, but I've thought a lot about it on the climate issue.
Yeah.
There are a lot of women that are working in Africa, in crop, in agriculture. How are they going, and especially with the climate conditions that are becoming more difficult, what are they going to be doing with their kids? Where are they leaving their children? These are issues that you would see in Africa in terms of patterns of how to deal with women's issue. Completely different issues of what you're seeing in the developed countries. One of the questions of inequality also that we just discussed, that was just discussed by Professor Acemoglu, this is huge. But in Africa, it's a matter of survival right now. It's not a matter of how they get a job and they take care of their kids, like in developed worlds.
And Dione Acemoglu talked about innovation, and you have Endeavour in Greece, which is basically about innovation, isn't it? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, basically I founded Endeavour in 2013. I'm not anymore part of it, but Constanza Kopoulou is here, who is the chairwoman of Endeavour. Endeavour is one of the most successful NGOs in Greece. It focuses on high-impact entrepreneurship. I think it was something it was an NGO, an institution that was very well needed, in great need in Greece, because Greece didn't really have an NGO that was focusing on the entrepreneurial sector, and Greeks are entrepreneurs by nature. Greeks are inside Greece and outside Greece. You see Greeks being entrepreneurs. But there was no real institution at the time in 2013 when I came to found Endeavour, an institution that promoted entrepreneurship and that would help the ecosystem to develop more entrepreneurs and create scaling up entrepreneurs. You could see that Greeks, whether it was outside Greece or in Greece, they started little businesses. But there was an issue with scaling up these businesses, or how do these businesses create sustainable economic growth, create jobs. The two things that Endeavour did, and did very successfully, and I'm very proud of this organization, is that they discovered companies that were either in the scaling up, how do they adapt and how do they scale up in other economies and outside Greece, or how would they manage to basically create jobs within Greece? how would they develop? They knew how Greeks are fantastic with ideas and great in starting up, but the scaling up, they didn't have the tools. Endeavor creates the tools. Mentoring, mentoring is one of the most important things, and Greeks have that too.
Yeah.
They have an advantage in teaching and helping. They're open up, a lot of role models. We need role models. I think role modeling is one of the most important things, especially for the younger generation.
I mean, the scaling up, I mean, you know, the cultural thing is obvious. I mean, the Greeks are wonderful in entrepreneurial culture. You can say the same of the Gujaratis in India, for example. You can say the Armenians, Palestinians. There are all sorts of cultures that really have this sort of instinct to create business. But the scaling up, does that demand government policy, changes in policy, or is it something that an NGO can do without any input from government?
No, I think it definitely needs a government intervention.
Tax incentives.
Yes, it's not only that. You need to create. You need to have a whole system in the ecosystem. You need from the, to me at least, you know, my belief is that you need from school, from the schooling where you teach children of how they can use tools. I was reading somewhere, but I couldn't find it last night, that the kids are more successful when you teach them at school from an early age about cores and also entrepreneurial, to think about and think in the direction of entrepreneurship and how to create something. Apparently, they're more successful. Then you have the junior achievement programs. And then you have to absolutely have different incentives, whether it's incentives for tax breaks, whether you have incentives for women, whether you have specific incentives in areas. How do you, especially for the rural areas, because in the urban areas, it's easier to create entrepreneurship tools. But in the rural areas where there are a lot of women, even in whether it's for the last 10 years after my 18 years at Deutsche Bank, I've been dealing with the creative industries. And the creative industries are more in the rural areas, in the periphery, in areas that are not so accessible, where you have to absolutely create economic incentives and tax breaks that could help, especially the women. Whether you can give electricity breaks if they're doing something, or whether you, different type of other tax breaks that would help them. It is extremely important. But I think government, in the ecosystem that you have to see, that you create and you develop, you have to take into consideration where exactly and who and what type of economic activity is there, what type of sector develops. And according to the sectors that are developed in that area, you can focus on it and develop tax breaks or incentives that are helpful.
A final question. I mean, you know, Greece endured a really horrendous period with the euro crisis. I mean, back before COVID. And now you've really bounced back. But during that period, there was a big departure of so many talented young Greeks. Now, the Greek culture, very innovative. Greek diaspora, very innovative. Greeks here, very innovative. But was that loss of population, of those young, talented people, what effect did that have on innovation and entrepreneurship in Greece?
I think that there was a brain drain, because of the political environment of what had happened in the economic crisis. I think these entrepreneurs are certainly coming back. They're coming back for at least in my opinion. First of all, because you're better off now living in Greece.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to say that, but there are a lot of advantages.
Yeah.
Economic advantages. There's, for an entrepreneur, there are, I think, two things that are extremely important. If he has an idea, he needs the funding. There's a lot of funding that is going on in Greece. There are private equity, there's angel funding, there's banking funding, there is a lot of sorts of funding.
But it's a pretty small economy here. I mean,
yeah, but
the venture capital pool must be quite small as well.
It is small, but you have a lot of angel financing, and you have a lot of equity financing coming from outside, looking at the domestic entrepreneurial sector. So that's one of the important things. Then you have a lot of mentoring. Mm-hmm. And the mentoring was not here during the economic crisis because a lot of entrepreneurs had left. They were focused on their businesses. Now they're giving back because the entrepreneurial mentoring is also a giving back part. It's not only the funding. You need some type of help in order to move forward. So I see that you see that. And then, John, if you will allow me, it's messy out there. Mm-hmm. It's messy in the UK.
Yeah,
sorry to say
no,
that.
Very
it's messy in the US. So where better can they find a better life when you have a political and economic stability? Because this was lacking. Yeah. When they feel that you have a political and economic stability, you come back and you try to find a way to survive in this environment because you're better off. So I think where better can you be than in Greece?
It's interesting you say that because I think today is where the UK has got a special business investment program. The Keir Starmer is trying to, and I think obviously the possibilities here are enormous. So I think you are in a pretty good place.
I think so. I mean, I wish your Prime Minister well, but it is complicated. It's much more complicated where you're running the show. I used to criticize my husband a lot, say, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? But when you're in the show, then things are much more complicated than they appear. It's easier to be on the outside and criticize, Indeed. But when you're in there...
Well, we've had far more prime ministers than you recently, so... So, yeah. Mareva, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.